Thank you, Nick. We're not supposed to be here today. They don't want you to be here. I'm going to talk about why that is. I'm going to address some of the people who don't want us to be here. They do not want an anti-war rally in this town. I want to talk to you as a son of Washington before I talk to you as a journalist. As someone who's known this city, who grew up in this city in the 1980s in this imperial capital. And I watched as my city was suddenly struck by a crack epidemic precisely at the same time that the CIA was seeking covert funding for its illegal wars in Latin America. And I watched as the streets of this city filled up with homeless Vietnam veterans, often still wearing their camouflage BDU, at the dawn of a homeless crisis that is now completely consuming our cities and which is apparent all around us. It was only recently, just a few years ago actually, as I walked through a riverside park by my home here in DC in Anacostia, that I noticed a small memorial to the Bonus Army, commemorating another generation of U.S. veterans who had been abandoned and betrayed by their government. Nearly 90 years ago, thousands of veterans of World War I gathered on the Anacostia Flats and along the Potomac, in Hoovervilles, makeshift camps, at the dawn of the Great Depression, to demand the bonuses they had been promised and denied by the U.S. government. They had fought in a segregated army, but they now stood together and lived together as black men and white men. Some were supporters of communism, some were supporters of the kind of America First style conservatism that was becoming in fashion at the time. And all were demonized by a government that saw this show of cultural and political unity as a threat to an empire in the making. Army Chief of Staff Douglas MacArthur warned that pacifism and its bedfellow communism are all around us, as he and the future heroes of the U.S. effort in World War II, Dwight Eisenhower and George Patton, sent their forces against these betrayed veterans. And on July 28, 1932, MacArthur and the U.S. Army attacked the Bonus Army and massacred them with tanks, cavalry, and machine guns, following orders to kill the men they had fought beside below the U.S. flag in the trenches of Europe. Now we stand here 90 years later in the same city where this massacre occurred, but countless disastrous wars later. And on the precipice of another economic crisis, we know that by coming here today, by coming together across artificial political boundaries and cultural lines imposed on us by our elites, we stand in the muddy boots of the Bonus Army as an imperial regime in deep decline trembles before us. And that's why it's so tragic to me that this rally has come under attack, not only by the usual suspects in the corporate media, but by sectarian forces that parade as progressive and anti-war. They say that right and left should not come together, that our petty differences must define and divide us, and that this rally is a danger to the movement. Well, let me speak now as a journalist who's met and lived with people on the other side of the guns of U.S. empire. Let me speak about the Palestinians I met in the rubble of Gaza who'd seen their families wiped out by U.S.-made missiles and howitzers fired by Israel's apartheid army simply because they dared to resist their dispossession. Let me speak to you about the Syrian people I met in Damascus who'd seen their city surrounded by NATO-backed jihadist militias and who now withstand Israeli bombs and sadistic U.S. sanctions. Let me talk to you about the people I met in Venezuela, Nicaragua, in Cuba, the troika of resistance, who have bravely weathered the storm of CIA destabilization plots and economic blockades. The people I know in the Horn of Africa, from Eritrea to Addis Ababa, who have seen 5 million people displaced by a US-backed proxy war that few Americans even know took place. The Koreans I met, who've been separated from their own people and families by an imposed divide, who have not known peace since the genocidal US war waged on them. And the people I know in the republics of Donbass and Lugansk, who have suffered for 9 years under the US-supplied bombs of the Ukrainian military and its sig-heiling neo-Nazi brigades, who celebrate and worship the Nazi collaborator Stepan Bandera, who murdered my own people in one pogrom after another. These people that I know and that I met on the other side of U.S. empire, they don't care if you're right wing or left wing. They don't care if you're a camo-clad Trumper or a progressive social justice activist. They don't care if you're vaccinated and masked and boosted. They don't care if you are libertarian or communist. All they want you to do is be out here today to rage against this sick, satanic, neoconservative war machine. That's what they want. Our corporate media, which is just a megaphone for our oligarchic elite, is constantly telling us who our enemies are. They said our enemy was in Serbia when I was a teenager. Then they said our enemy was in Afghanistan. Then they said our enemy was in Iraq. And maybe our enemy was down the street in the local mosque. And we are here today to say that we know who our real enemy is. Our enemy is not in Russia. Our enemy is you, the corporate media, and the oligarchy that you speak for. Our enemy is the empire that's robbed us of our rights, that's looted our treasury for its insane imperial regime change wars, and that has hounded and jailed real journalists like Julian Assange. They say we need to fight them over there so we don't have to fight them here. We say that we will fight the neoconservatives over here before they kill millions more over there. Can you dig it? That's not our war. Whether in Ukraine or the war they're planning over the Straits of Taiwan, their war is not our war. Our war is for the hundreds of thousands of homeless people sleeping in the cold. Our war is to clean up our rivers. Our war is to fix our crumbling schools and roads. Our war is to fight for the minds of our brothers and sisters subjected to a nonstop tidal wave of corporate media propaganda. Our war starts here. Our war starts today. Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Thank you.